I supported my husband through his PhD with one hand. Now that he is successful, my mother-in-law forces a divorce, saying a kitchen woman like me is no longer worthy. I smile coldly. You and your mother played your cards a bit too early. It was a late winter afternoon in Oak Creek, Pennsylvania, the freezing drizzle sweeping across the porch. Out on the street, groups of factory workers from the Apex manufacturing plant were driving home, their heavy coats damp from the weather. Inside my diner, a large pot of slow-cooked beef stew was bubbling on the stove, the rich smell of onions and roasted meat mixing with the kitchen heat that stung the corners of my eyes. My name is Diana, and I was in my early 40s. If you asked me what word defined my life since the day I got married, I would immediately say the word endurance. Enduring a harsh comment from my mother-in-law, enduring the condescending looks from his relatives, enduring the times my husband was completely thoughtless. I always believed that once a woman was married, she had to know how to build a life, how to bite her tongue to keep the peace. My mother used to tell me that taking the high road leads to a happy home. I believed it deeply, so deeply that it took me years to understand the truth. Biting your tongue for the right person builds a foundation, but doing it for the wrong person just makes them think you cannot feel pain. I married Kevin when he was just an adjunct professor at a local state college. He carried himself with a quiet humility back then. Every month, after paying for gas, textbooks, and helping his mother, he barely had a dime left. He drove a beat-up Honda Civic, the ripped driver's seat patched with black duct tape. His white dress shirts were always faded at the shoulders, the cuffs a bit frayed, but he wore them neatly. When we first met, I fell in love with that gentle demeanor. He spoke softly and was always polite. He did not drink heavily, did not gamble, and did not waste time at local bars. His entire fortune consisted of stacks of used academic books, a few lecture drafts, and a dream that sounded both distant and bright. He wanted to get his PhD, secure a tenured position at the university, and eventually take care of his mother, his wife, and his future children. Once, sitting on the porch of his rented duplex, he held my hand and said, "Diana, I know I am poor right now, but I do not want to be poor forever. I am not getting this degree to show off. I am doing it so my future family will not have to struggle." Hearing that softened my heart. A young woman often does not fear poverty, she only fears a man without ambition. I thought it was fine if Kevin was poor, as long as he was decent, loved his wife, and remembered the days when we had nothing. I told myself that life has its ups and downs, but if a husband and wife are truly united, they can move mountains. Kevin's family was not well off either. His father passed away early from a severe illness. His mother, Martha, sold homemade jams, baked goods, and dried fruits at the county flea market. Her booth was small, with just a few crates of preserves, roasted nuts, and dried apples hanging from the racks. Every morning she woke up before dawn to set up, and every evening she hunched over counting small bills. Martha became a widow at a young age and raised Kevin all by herself. Because of that, in her eyes, Kevin was not just a son. He was her pride, her pillar, the ultimate bet she placed her entire life on. She often told the neighbors that she could endure any hardship as long as her Kevin could hold his head high in society. At first, I genuinely cared for her. A woman who carried the weight of the world to raise her son into a college instructor deserved respect. When I became her daughter-in-law, I promised myself I would treat her like my own mother. Whatever she said, I listened. Whatever she needed, I did. During Thanksgiving dinners and family reunions, I rolled up my sleeves and cleaned up before anyone even asked. I called her mom with absolute respect, and in the early days, she called me her daughter. One day, while helping her pack jars of jam in the kitchen, she looked at me and said, "Having you in this family makes me happy. Kevin is smart, but he lacks practical sense. With a wife who knows how to take care of things like you, I can rest easy." Just that one sentence made my whole day. I thought I was lucky. My mother-in-law was hardened by life but reasonable. My husband was poor but educated. We were not rich, but we had love. At that time, I did not understand that some people's early sweetness is like a cup of hot tea in the freezing cold. It warms you at first, but if left too long, it leaves a bitter taste in your throat. In Kevin's family, the person with the loudest voice was Uncle Robert, his father's older brother. Uncle Robert was not particularly wealthy, but he loved acting as the patriarch. Whether it was a wedding, a funeral, property divisions, or church events, he always wanted to be front and center to give a speech. He constantly preached about family values, tradition, and legacy. On my wedding day, Uncle Robert patted Kevin on the shoulder and announced loudly in the yard, "Kevin is the most educated man in this family. He is going to bring honor to our name. His wife must know how to uphold that image. Do not ever make your husband lose face." I just bowed my head and smiled. I thought it was just standard advice from an elder. Little did I know that the phrase, "do not make your husband lose face," would later become the ruler they used to measure me, to look down on me, and to erase all the years I spent breaking my back to fund his success. At the flea market, Martha had a close friend named Brenda. Brenda ran the stall right next to hers, and her mouth moved faster than her hands. She knew everyone's business, and even if she did not have the facts, she spoke as if she did. Initially, she was very fond of me. "Diana is a hard worker, Martha. Having her in your house brings in good light, but praises from a gossip are as thin as tissue paper. Today they praise you, tomorrow they change their tune the moment they find a more entertaining topic." I did not pay attention then. I just thought it was typical market chatter. After the wedding, our finances were tight. Kevin was teaching, and I helped my parents with some small business tasks before deciding to open my own diner. My parents were blue-collar workers but loved their daughter. My dad told me, "You are newly married. Having your own trade is better than waiting on your husband's paycheck. If you are willing to put in the work, your mom and I will help with the seed money." Tears welled up in my eyes. For a married woman, having her parents as a backup makes her feel so much more secure. But I thought very simply. I figured that whatever capital I had would be poured into my new family, giving my husband and me a foundation to build on. In those early years, I never kept score with Kevin. When he came home tired from teaching, I had dinner ready. When he needed books, I handed him the money. When Martha's arthritis flared up in the winter, I massaged her back, cooked her soup, and bought her medicine. I believed that if I gave my whole heart, I would receive a whole heart in return. Kevin still loved me back then. One evening, as I set the dinner plates down, he pulled out a chair for me and smiled. "Whatever I achieve in the future, the biggest credit goes to you." I naively replied, "What credit?" "Just remember that tonight's meatloaf is a little salty." He laughed, and I laughed with him. The laughter of a poor young couple felt so light, completely unaware of the storms waiting ahead. Whenever Martha heard Kevin talk about getting his PhD, her eyes lit up. She would sit on the porch, sorting her dried goods, and say, "Kevin, I never got a proper education. You have to go as far as you can so people respect us. We might be poor in cash, but we will not be poor in brains." Hearing that made my heart ache with sympathy. What mother does not want her child to succeed? If I am his wife and I do not support him, who will? So, from the very beginning, I voluntarily took on an unspoken promise to walk with Kevin until the day he made his name. The only problem is, when a woman volunteers to carry too much, the people around her gradually forget it is a sacrifice. They start to see it as her duty. It started with a hot meal, then became textbook money, rent money, gas money, reputation money, future money. Every time I pushed myself a little harder, they stepped back a little further, leaving me to carry the weight alone. I did not realize it then. All I saw was my mother-in-law's small house, an ambitious husband, our future children, and a simple dream. If a poor couple loves each other, heaven will not abandon them. I did not know that some people hold your hand very tightly when they are standing at the bottom. But the moment they climb to the top, they look down at your calloused hands and decide you are no longer worthy of walking beside them. My parents lived in the next town over. They were not rich, but they made an honest living their whole lives. My dad used to drive a delivery truck, and my mom ran a produce stand. They saved for years, and when I got married, they gave me a separate savings account. My dad placed the bank book in my hands and spoke slowly. "Diana, we do not have a massive inheritance to give you, but a married woman should always have a little money of her own, not to compete with anyone, but so you can stand on your own 2 feet when you need to." I nodded, but my mind was simple. I was married now, so my money was meant to build my family. I had no idea my father's words would echo in my head years later like a delayed sigh of regret. I leased a small commercial space near the Apex manufacturing plant. Calling it a commercial space is generous. It was an old cinder block building with a chipped concrete patio in front and a low tin roof. In the summer, it was an oven. In the winter, the rain hit the metal roof, sounding like a drum line. I managed to fit 7 Formica tables, bought some old wall-mounted fans, and set up a glass display case for the food. The day I hung the first sign, I stood there staring at it forever. Diana's Comfort Diner. The paint was fresh, the lettering slightly crooked because the sign maker rushed it, but I loved it fiercely. It was like my firstborn child, small and clumsy but full of hope. In the early days, I woke up at 3:45 in the morning. While it was pitch black, I threw on my heavy coat and drove to the wholesale market. The market was freezing, the concrete floors wet. Vendors huddled around space heaters beneath dim yellow lights. I picked through crates of potatoes, fresh green beans, cuts of chuck roast, pork belly, and whole chickens. Sometimes I found great deals on ground beef and made massive batches of chili. On freezing days, I roasted chicken with root vegetables and made thick gravy so the factory workers could have a hot, filling meal. I did not cook anything fancy. It was just meatloaf, mashed potatoes, fried chicken, baked ziti, and hearty soups. But I cooked as if I was feeding my own family. The potatoes had to be creamy, the soup piping hot, the meat fresh. I told myself that people working 12-hour shifts on an assembly line deserved a decent plate of food to ease their exhaustion. At first, business was slow. Some days I cooked a whole roast and could not sell it all. I had to sit there in the afternoon shredding the leftovers to eat with Kevin. He looked at my exhausted face, rolled up his sleeves, and helped me wash the dishes. I will never forget how he looked that day. His dress shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows, standing by the sink full of soapy water, smiling. With food this good, the place will be packed soon. Do not worry, hard work always pays off. Hearing that made the exhaustion fade. When you are poor, a single word of encouragement is like a glass of ice water in the desert. It does not cost a thing, but it gives you the strength to keep going. Sure enough, the diner got busier. The factory workers became regulars, praising the hearty portions, fresh sides, and flavorful gravy. Someone joked, "Diana, you feed us like an army. Eat here for lunch, and we do not even need dinner." I laughed and replied, "You need a full stomach for overtime. If I give you a small plate and your stomach growls at 3 p.m., you will call me cheap." Word of mouth spread. From 7 tables, I bought a few more. I served breakfast specials in the morning and lunch in the afternoon. I even started taking large catering orders for the night shift crews. I constantly smelled like fry, grease, onions, and roast beef, but my heart was happy because the money I made was clean. After 3 months, I hired Helen to help. She was 10 years older than me, a widow with a son in trade school. She was fast, honest, and meticulous with the books. Every evening, she sat at the small counter writing down every expense. How much for meat, how much for veggies, the gas bill, the daily revenue, the pending accounts. She told me, "Running a restaurant is brutal, Diana. You have to know exactly what comes in and what goes out. Otherwise, you can be packed with customers and still wonder where the money went at the end of the month." I listened to her. The business license was in my name. The commercial lease was signed by me. The bank account used to receive payments for the catering orders was my personal account. I did it because I was the one running the business, not because I was separating mine from his. In my head, a husband and wife were one entity, and the paperwork was just for operational convenience. Kevin often stopped by the diner after teaching. He would sit at a corner table near the door, open his laptop, and grade papers. Sometimes when the rush hit, he would stand up to serve soup, hand out silverware, or help a customer back out of a tight parking spot. The factory ladies teased him. "Look at the college professor waiting tables for his wife." He smiled gently. "If I do not help my wife, she will make me sleep on the porch." The whole diner laughed. I scooped a ladle of gravy, glanced at him, and felt a deep warmth. Back then, I truly believed I had married the right man. Then one evening, after closing up, Kevin sat at the register for a long time. He looked at the ledger, then at me, his voice hesitant. "Diana, I want to go back to school." I wiped my hands on a towel and asked, "What do you mean?" "I want to prep for the exams to get into a PhD program. If I get in, I will pursue my doctorate. I know it will be hard and expensive, but if I do not do this, I will be stuck as an adjunct forever, living paycheck to paycheck. When we have kids, I do not want you to be the only one carrying the financial burden." I stayed silent, not because I did not want him to study, but because I knew what those 3 letters meant. A PhD was not just a few books and classes. It meant tuition, research materials, travel, hotels, and academic conferences. It meant years of a wife hustling to make money while waiting for her husband to succeed. Seeing my silence, Kevin took my hand. "I am not asking you to carry it all. I will take on extra classes, apply for grants. I just need you to believe in me." That phrase, "I just need you to believe in me," broke down all my defenses. It hit the exact hopeful core of a young wife. I looked around my small diner, at the low tin roof, at the plastic tables still damp from being wiped down, and thought, if I do not support him now, and he misses his chance, will I regret it forever? I asked him, "When you finish, will you forget these days?" Key Dentadensing looked at me, almost playfully offended. "That is a ridiculous question. Without you, how would I even have a future to remember or forget?" I believed him. I believed him so much I did not ask another question. From that day on, my small diner did not just feed my family and my mother-in-law. It started feeding a much larger dream. Every plate of food sold, every catered box delivered. Every morning I stood with stinging eyes over a hot stove. I told myself I was laying the bricks for my husband's future. When Martha heard Kevin wanted to get his PhD, she was so thrilled she practically ran to the diner. Before she even sat down, she said, "You have to do it. You have the brains. It would be a waste not to. Diana, you just have to work a little harder. Once a man gets his title, his wife and kids reap the benefits." I poured her a glass of water and respectfully replied, "Yes, I think so too. If he has the drive, I will do my best to support him." Martha nodded, but her next sentence made me pause. "My life has been full of suffering, now I only look to him. Once he becomes a doctor, our whole family can hold our heads high." She said our whole family, but her eyes were fixed solely on Kevin. As for me, the one who would wake up in the dark to fund that journey, I felt like nothing more than a shadow. I noticed it, but let it go. When your heart is full of love, you are an expert at making excuses for the things that hurt you. I figured a mother just favors her son. Why bicker over words with my mother-in-law? So I threw myself into the work. The diner's stoves fired up before dawn. Pots boiled, skillets sizzled. The sound of customers ordering, Helen writing in the ledger, and Kevin calling to say he needed money for textbooks all blended into the rhythm of my life. At that time, I did not know that the road ahead was not just long, but filled with thorns. I especially did not know that my little diner, the very boat I used to row my husband across the river, would eventually become the prize they wanted to snatch from my hands. Once Kevin started prepping for his doctoral program, our small house felt like it was running on an invisible ticking clock. Mornings he taught, afternoons he spent at the campus library, and nights he buried himself in foreign language texts. Watching him lose weight from staying up late, I felt both pity and anxiety. One evening, he placed a piece of paper in front of me listing the required fees: prep courses, application fees, travel to New York to meet potential advisors, and expensive academic journals. It totaled over $2,000. For my newly opened diner, that was a massive boulder on my chest. Kevin looked at me, his voice dropping. Should I postpone it for a year? I shook my head. No. When momentum is on your side, you have to push forward. Let me handle the money. That night, I lay facing the wall, eyes wide open. Inventory bills were due, rent was coming up, and Martha's arthritis was acting up again. After tossing and turning, I quietly opened the wooden jewelry box in my closet. Inside was the pair of gold wedding earrings my mother gave me. The next morning, I took them to a jeweler downtown. The owner weighed them and offered me $1,200. As I held the cash, my hands shook slightly. I felt like I had just cut away a piece of my parents' love for me. I brought the money home, put it in an envelope, and handed it to Kevin. He asked where I got it so fast. I just smiled and said, "The diner has been busy lately. Pay the fees before the deadline." He looked at me for a moment, probably guessing the truth, then grabbed my hand. "I owe you so much." I joked back, "Pay me back with a mansion and a luxury car later. If not, you owe me an hour of dishwashing every day." He laughed, and I laughed too. Back then, our laughter was still crystal clear. Martha found out that afternoon when she saw the pawn receipt in my drawer. She asked, and I did not hide it. She sat quietly for a moment, then sighed. "You do have a good heart for your husband." That was it. One short sentence. Not exactly a thank you, and not exactly affection. A few days later, the family gathered for a memorial dinner for Kevin's grandfather. Relatives arrived early. I was busy in the kitchen keeping an eye on the soup, slicing roast beef, and shooing the nieces and nephews away from the hot stove. In the living room, Uncle Robert was boasting about Kevin's PhD applications with immense pride. Kevin getting his doctorate is a blessing for this family. In this day and age, education is power. An aunt asked. The fees must be a fortune, right? I was washing dishes in the back when I heard Martha answer without missing a beat. Well, Kevin and I scrape together whatever we can. As long as I am breathing, he has someone to rely on. I will work myself to the bone to provide for him. My hands stopped moving in the soapy water. Nobody knew my wedding earrings were sitting in a pawn shop. Nobody knew the cash envelope came from my hands. My sacrifice, through a single sentence from my mother-in-law, was transformed into her martyrdom. It hurt, but I swallowed it down. I told myself, she is his mother, she raised him. It is fine if she wants to take a little credit. Later that evening, Uncle Robert patted Kevin on the back. "Kevin, you are the hope of this family. Once you get that degree, you have to maintain an image. When you associate with educated people, everything from your clothes to your household has to be flawless. Do not let anyone look down on you." I was carrying a tray of appetizers from the kitchen and lowered my eyes. The word household was vague, but his eyes swept over my grease-stained apron in a flash. Brenda was sitting on the porch, chuckling. A son studying so high will eventually rub shoulders with city folks and dignitaries. His wife needs to start cleaning up her act. If she keeps burying her head in a greasy kitchen, people will say she does not match him. Kevin heard it all, but he said nothing. He just gave a forced smile. That night, after I finished cleaning up, Kevin walked into the kitchen and handed me a glass of warm water. Just 3 words. "Are you tired?" And all the resentment in me melted. I looked at him. "Later, if anyone asks where your tuition came from, please tell them the truth, that your wife contributed a little bit." He squeezed my hand. "I know. I will never forget what you have done." I believed him, just like I believed the potatoes would boil if I turned on the stove. I did not know that promises made when someone is at the bottom sound deeply sincere, but when they step up to the high ground, those promises are easily left behind. Kevin was accepted into the doctoral program on an early summer morning. He called me, his voice so excited I could hear him breathing heavily through the phone. "Diana, I got in." I was standing over a skillet of frying bacon, hot grease popping onto the back of my hand, burning my skin. Yet hearing his words, I forgot the pain. I smiled like a lottery winner. "Really? That is amazing. Keep it up. Our family has hope now." I said our family because I truly believed that acceptance letter did not just belong to him. It was the reward for his late-night studying and the reward for my penny-pinching and back-breaking work at the diner. But the joy barely settled before the bills started rolling in. The first tuition installment, specialized research materials, travel lodging. Every time he went to Boston to meet his advisor, there were train tickets, printing costs, and hotel rooms. Every expense sounded reasonable, but added up, it was dizzying. My diner was busier than ever. I took on an extra catering contract for a logistics warehouse nearby. Every day, besides the walk-in customers, I had to prep over 100 box lunches on a strict schedule. By 4:00 a.m., I was at the market, eyes burning from lack of sleep. My hands were already picking out produce and haggling over bulk prices. Back at the diner, I fired up the ovens, washed the potatoes, marinated the meat, and started the soups. Helen helped me chop vegetables, wash dishes, and portion the food into containers. Some days we could not keep up. I would be flipping burgers and shouting, "Helen, pack the mac and cheese first. I will slice the meatloaf in a second, or the warehouse manager is going to blow up my phone." Helen would laugh, sweat pouring down her face. "You run this place like a military boot camp, Diana. Catering is more stressful than primetime TV." I laughed too, but my back felt like someone had dropped a boulder on it, lifting massive pots of soup, dragging 50-pound bags of flour into the corner. The sink was piled high with dishes, and the skin on my hands cracked and bled every time I touched dish soap. When I took off my clothes at night, the smell of grease, onions, and bleach was seeped into my skin. Martha stopped by occasionally. She was happy to see the diner packed, but every sentence revolved around Kevin. "Hang in there. Kevin is at a crucial stage and needs a lot of funding. Work hard now, and when he makes his name, you will bask in his glory." I heard the phrase "bask in his glory" and felt a sting. I did not want to bask. I just wanted my hard work to be recognized as the partnership of a wife, not treated as a given, like the sun rising in the east. But I bit my tongue, telling myself old people speak carelessly but do not mean harm. Lily was just over 4 years old at the time. She was a sweet girl with big round eyes and her hair in pigtails. Because I was always at the diner, Lily would sit at a small table near the register, coloring on scrap paper. The regulars adored her, slipping her a piece of candy or a dollar bill. Because she rarely saw her dad, who was commuting back and forth and sometimes staying out of town for days, she was ecstatic whenever he came home. She would cling to his leg and not let go, but he was usually exhausted, patting her head a few times before opening his laptop. One night, Lily asked me, "Mommy, Daddy studies for so long. When is he going to be done?" I stroked her hair. "Daddy is studying so he can get a better job. We have to be understanding." She nodded, her innocent voice cutting deep. "Then I will be understanding with you too, Mommy. Because you cook longer than Daddy studies." I turned away, pretending to clear plates, terrified she would see my red eyes. One sweltering night in late August, Lily spiked a high fever. Her body was burning, her lips dry, her eyes glassy. I called Kevin, but it went straight to voicemail. I called Martha, but she said her knees were too swollen to come over. I threw a coat on, wrapped Lily in a blanket, and drove straight to the county hospital ER. The night in the emergency room was endless. The fluorescent lights were blinding, the smell of antiseptic overwhelming. I sat on a hard plastic chair holding Lily, fanning her with some hospital paperwork while holding her IV line. She whimpered in her sleep, "Mommy, I am cold." I pulled my jacket over her and whispered, "I am right here, baby. The doctor gave you medicine. The fever will break soon." Towards dawn, she finally settled. I leaned my head against the cinder block wall, my eyes burning from exhaustion. My phone buzzed. It was Kevin. I was so relieved, thinking he saw my missed calls. But the second I answered, he spoke in a rush. Diana, can you wire me some money right now? I have to pay the registration fee for the academic conference today, or I lose my presentation slot. I went dead silent. I looked at Lily lying on the hospital bed with an IV in her arm. After paying the ER copay, I had less than $50 in my checking account. My throat closed up. Kevin's voice crackled on the line. Are you there? This is urgent, I whispered. Lily has a high fever. I brought her to the ER last night. He paused, his voice softening slightly but still rushed. Is she okay? Is it serious? The doctor said they need to monitor her. Okay, take good care of her. But this conference is vital, Diana. If I present, it looks incredible on my dossier. Can you scramble the money together for me? Hearing that, I felt like someone was crushing my heart in their fist. On one side was my daughter, breathing heavily on a hospital bed. On the other was my husband's doctoral dream. I wanted to scream, "Come home to your daughter." But the words that finally forced their way out were, "Okay, how much do you need?" He gave me the number. I closed my eyes and replied, "I will send it shortly." I hung up. I sat there in silence for a very long time. Tears did not stream down my face. They just slid quietly down my neck. I called Helen, my voice raspy. "Helen, can you loan me some money? I will pay you back the second the catering checks clear this weekend." Helen, knowing I was at the hospital, panicked. "Good Lord, your kid is in the ER and you are scrambling to send money to your husband?" I forced a weak laugh. "It is an emergency for his program. I have to figure it out." She stayed quiet for a long time before saying, "I will transfer it. But Diana, loving your husband is a good thing. Just make sure you do not love him so much you forget about yourself." Her words pierced me, but I brushed them off. I received Helen's transfer and immediately sent it to Kevin. Less than a minute after the transaction cleared, he texted back, "Got it. Thanks." That was it. He did not ask if Lily's fever had broken. He did not ask if I had money for breakfast. He did not ask how I managed to get our child to the hospital in the middle of the night. I stared at the text, and the hospital felt freezing cold. People say a husband is someone you lean on. But that night, sitting in the hallway clutching my daughter's diaper bag, I realized that some married women still have to be the load-bearing pillars of their own lives. The next morning, Lily woke up. She looked at me, her voice faint. "Mommy, does Daddy know I am sick?" I stroked her cheek and forced a smile. "Yes, baby. Daddy is busy studying, but he loves you very much." Saying that left a bitter taste in my mouth. I did not know if I was comforting my child or lying to myself to find the strength to keep walking. That afternoon, I brought Lily back to the diner. Helen had already made a pot of chicken noodle soup for us. She looked at me, not with judgment, but quietly placed a cup of hot ginger tea in front of me. "Drink it. You look like a ghost." I took the cup, my hands trembling slightly. Outside, customers were still ordering, the soup was still boiling, the phone was ringing with catering orders for tomorrow. The world did not stop spinning just because my daughter had a fever. That night, after rocking Lily to sleep on the folding cot behind the counter, I sat down to balance the books. The hospital bills, the inventory costs, the money sent to Kevin, the loan from Helen. Every number stared back at me in stark reality. For the first time, I realized I was not just a wife supporting a student husband. I was like the old well in my parents' backyard. Whoever was thirsty drew water from it, but no one ever looked down to see if the well was running dry. But I did not stop. I told myself, once we get through this hard phase, Kevin will understand. An educated, intelligent man surely will not forget the woman who transferred him money for a conference while holding their sick child in an emergency room. I believed that. And because I believed that, I endured for several more years. After the night Lily was hospitalized, I went back to running the diner as if nothing had happened. Up before dawn to hit the market. Standing over the stove serving lunches at noon. Balancing the books in the evening. Washing stacks of greasy rags at night. But something inside me had shifted. It was not that I stopped loving Kevin, and it was not that I wanted to keep score. But every time my phone pinged with a text from him asking for money for books, conference fees, or rent in the city, my hands hesitated for a few seconds. I would see Lily's pale face on the hospital bed, remember his brief got it text, and wonder if I was loving someone else so much I was abandoning my daughter and myself. One rainy evening, the diner emptied out early. I was sitting behind the register, wiping down the cash drawer while calculating what I still owed Helen. She was at the next table prepping vegetables. She watched me for a moment and said, "Diana, let me ask you something. All the money you have sent Kevin for his education, are you keeping records of it?" I looked up. "Records? We are married. He needs it. I send it. The bank has the transaction history." Helen put her knife down, her voice dead serious. Bank histories disappear when you change accounts or lose your phone. You need paper. Not to hold it over his head, but so you know exactly where your sweat and blood went. I forced a laugh. You make it sound like we are headed for divorce court. She looked at me with sad eyes. A woman who has been through hell does not need to shout to make you listen. I do not want you in divorce court, Diana. But life is strange. When there is love, tap water tastes like wine. When love dries up, they will look at a feast you made and call you a parasite. I was burned once. I do not want you to end up like me. I stayed silent. Helen rarely talked about her past. I only knew her husband passed away early and she raised her son alone. But that night, seeing how naive I was, she opened up. When her husband was alive, they pooled their money to renovate his parents' house. She sold her own family heirlooms and gave him cash. No receipts, no witnesses. When he died, his family told her the house was theirs, and she was just a guest. The jewelry she sold? They claimed she did it voluntarily and nobody forced her. She walked out with her son and absolutely nothing. She spoke softly, but every word felt like a hammer to my chest. Diana, I am not telling you to distrust your husband. But as women, when we walk a difficult path for someone we love, we must leave footprints. Otherwise, when they reach the finish line, they will turn around and say we were never walking beside them. I looked down at my hands, cracked knuckles from the dish soap, nails permanently stained from spices, calluses from lifting heavy pots. I had walked with Kevin using these very hands, but if I did not document it, would anyone believe me later? That night, after putting Lily to bed, I opened my phone. I took screenshots of every single transfer I had sent Kevin, the initial prep courses, the rent money for his stays in the city, the textbooks, the conference fee from the night in the ER. I went to the FedEx print shop downtown the next day and printed them all out, organizing them by month. At first, I felt incredibly guilty. Holding that stack of papers, I felt like a petty, calculating wife. But Helen's words echoed in my head. Money does not destroy love. Only toxic people fear black ink on white paper. From that day on, I kept everything. The receipt for his laptop? Filed. The tuition payment confirmations? Filed. Bus tickets, train tickets, bank deposit slips, texts asking for money I printed or screenshotted all of it. If I took out a small business loan and used a portion to help him, I noted it in a ledger. Helen helped me set up a separate notebook. On the cover, it just said, Kevin's education. I did not tell him. Not because I was plotting, but because I did not want him to feel bad. I did not want him to think I was keeping score in our marriage. I kept sending him money, asking if he was eating well, telling him to take care of his health. But Kevin's texts grew shorter and shorter. Once, I transferred him $800 for rent and books. He replied, got it. I waited, thinking he would ask how Lily was doing, if the diner was busy, if I was exhausted. Nothing. The screen stayed dark. I laughed at myself and put the phone face down. Sometimes a woman does not break because of a massive betrayal, but because a tiny, simple question is never asked. Martha, however, was different. Whenever Kevin called her needing money, she marched straight to the diner. Diana, Kevin is at a critical point. You need to scrape the barrel for him. If his studies get interrupted, all this effort is wasted. I was carrying a massive pot of soup, sweat dripping down my neck. Yes, Mom, I know. She looked around the crowded diner and nodded approvingly. Having a packed house is a blessing from my family's ancestors. You only get this kind of luck because Kevin is an educated man and our family is blessed. My grip tightened on the pot handles. This diner was funded by my parents. It ran because I woke up in the dark and Helen and I washed mountains of dishes. Yet, in my mother-in-law's mouth, it was a blessing from her family, courtesy of her son's intelligence. I wanted to snap back, but I bit my lip. Winning an argument with a mother-in-law gets you nowhere. It just makes family dinners miserable. A brown canvas bag appeared one afternoon while I was cleaning out a storage closet. It was an old bag my mother used to keep sewing patterns in. The straps were slightly frayed, but the zipper was sturdy. I washed it, dried it, and placed it in the bottom drawer beneath the cash register. From then on, every receipt, printout, and bank statement regarding Kevin's education went into that bag. At first, it was flat. Months later, it started to bulk up. It got heavier. Every time I pulled the zipper, the sound of crinkling paper gave me a strange feeling. This was not gold or stocks. It was my sweat. It was the freezing morning market runs. It was the nights Lily slept on a cot. It was the winter coats I did not buy for myself so my husband could publish his papers. One day, Lily saw me putting a receipt into the bag and asked, Mommy, what is in that bag that you hide so carefully? I patted her head. It holds the days Mommy worked very hard. She did not understand, just smiled and ran outside to play with the stray cat on the patio. I watched her, my heart softening. That is right, I was not keeping this to attack Kevin. I was keeping it because my daughter and I needed protection. People can suffer amnesia, but receipts do not lie. That night, Kevin called. He said he needed to spend more time in the city to work on his dissertation and would be coming home less frequently. I asked if he was exhausted. He gave a dismissive answer. Tired, but I am used to it. Just run the diner well. Do not give my mother anything to stress over. I stayed silent for a few seconds. Do not give my mother anything to stress over. That sentence felt heavier than the cast iron skillets on my stove. He did not tell me not to work too hard. He did not tell me to take care of my health. He just told me not to bother his mother. Yet, I kept my voice soft. Okay, just focus on your studies. I hung up and sat alone in the half-lit diner. Outside, the rain was tapping against the glass. In the kitchen, the leftover roast was getting cold, the fat congealing on top. Helen walked past, saw me sitting rigidly, and put a hand on my shoulder. Are you sad? I shook my head. No, Helen, I am just wondering. When he finally makes it, will he remember these days? Helen sighed. A decent man remembers. A terrible man will call you a burden even if you remind him. I did not answer. I just pulled open the drawer and stared at the brown canvas bag lying in the dark. I genuinely hoped I would never have to use it. I hoped that one day when Kevin became a PhD, I would open the bag, show him the papers, and laugh. Look at how much we overcame. I wanted that so badly. But life rarely follows the script you write in your head. Sometimes the things you hide away out of fear of forgetting become the only weapons you have when others try to erase you. Going into his 4th year, Kevin's studies hit what he called a pivot point. He said his dissertation topic was highly praised by Professor Vance. If he could spend a semester abroad doing an academic exchange in Europe, his resume would be elite. I did not understand all the academic jargon, but I understood one thing. It meant more money. He came home late that night. A cold March rain was falling, his jacket speckled with water. He dropped his briefcase and sat at the dining table, looking both anxious and excited. Diana, I have an opportunity to do a 4-month fellowship abroad. It is highly exclusive. If I go, my publication chances skyrocket, and my defense will be a breeze. I was ladling soup into a bowl, my hand freezing midair. How much do you need? He paused, then slid a piece of paper across the table. It listed international flights, program fees, insurance, housing, living stipends, and translation costs. I looked at the bottom line and my heart dropped into my stomach. Even with the partial grant he mentioned, the remaining balance was light years beyond what a small diner could generate. I did not speak immediately. I set the bowl of soup in front of him and tried to keep my voice steady. Eat first. It is getting cold. He looked at me, knowing I was stressed, but instead of reassuring me, he sighed. I know it is a lot, but if I miss this chance, I will not get another one. That sentence was a hook tearing into my guilt. The scariest word to a supportive wife is opportunity, because if you do not find a way to make it happen, you become the villain holding your husband back. For the next few days, I scrambled. The diner needed inventory, Helen needed her paycheck, and the commercial rent was due. I asked the bank, but they could only offer a small line of credit because we already had a business loan. Martha heard the news and rushed to the diner, sitting right next to the boiling fryers, frantic. Diana, you have to figure this out for Kevin. You do not get chances like this every day. When he becomes a doctor, this whole family is set. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. It is easy to say, Mom, but this is a massive amount of money. I am trying to find a way. Martha clicked her tongue. You are his wife! If you do not figure it out now, who will? I am an old woman with a flea market stall. Where am I going to find tens of thousands of dollars? I felt a lump in my throat. She was right, she did not have the money. But every time there was a crisis, the ultimate burden was dropped squarely on my shoulders, as if it was my absolute duty. That night, I opened my personal lockbox. Inside was the deed to a small lakeside plot of land my parents had given me before I got married. It was not huge, but it was what my dad called a daughter's escape hatch. For years, I had kept it as a silent token of my parents' love. I stared at the deed for a long time. If I sold it, Kevin could go to Europe. If I did not, he would miss his golden opportunity. I asked myself, what is more important, my husband's future or my safety net? Because I still loved him too much, the answer tilted toward him. I visited my parents on a sunny afternoon. My mom was out on the porch snapping green beans. Seeing me walk up with a folder, she sensed something was wrong. My dad poured a cup of coffee and asked, You need money, do you not? Before I could speak, my eyes welled up. After I explained the situation, my parents sat in absolute silence. My mom looked away, wiping her eyes with her apron. My dad held his coffee mug, his hands trembling slightly. Diana, we gave you that land for you. Not because we are stingy, but because a married woman needs a place to fall back on when the storm hits. I looked down. I know, Dad. But Kevin is at a crucial turning point. If he fails because of money, I am terrified he will resent me forever, and I will resent myself. My dad looked at me for a long time. His eyes were not angry, just profoundly sad. I will not stop you from loving your husband. But remember my words. Never love someone so much that you tear the roof off your own house to keep them warm. If they are a decent person, they will be grateful. If they are not, you could sell your soul and they would still say you offered it willingly. I bit my lip and nodded. At that time, I still believed Kevin was a decent person. Selling the land happened faster than expected. A local family bought it to build a cabin. The final sale price was $35,000. The day I went to the notary to sign the papers, I wore an old flannel shirt, my hair in a messy bun. As the pen dragged across the paper, my hand shook. I felt a piece of my foundation crack and fall away. My dad was waiting in the parking lot. When I walked out, he did not ask questions. He just handed me a bottle of water. Drink up, kid. I took it and forced a smile. Do not worry, Dad. When Kevin is successful, we will buy a bigger plot. He did not reply. He looked out at the dusty road and muttered, I just hope that when the time comes, they do not forget what you sold today. I turned my head, tears falling before I could stop them. After the funds cleared, I did not hand Kevin a lump sum. I transferred the money strictly for its purpose. Flights, program fees, housing, his first month's stipend. Every time I clicked send, I screenshotted the bank confirmation, printed it out, and put it in the brown canvas bag. Next to every receipt, I wrote in blue ink, funded by the sale of Diana's personal lakeside property. Kevin received the transfers and texted back, Got it. Thanks. I stared at the message, telling myself he was just busy prepping his paperwork. When a woman desperately wants to believe she can rationalize freezing indifference as a busy schedule, the day he flew out, I could not go to the airport because of a massive catering order. I woke up at 3:00 a.m., making him a batch of beef jerky, roasted nuts, and packing some instant coffee in case he missed the taste of home. He rolled his suitcase to the door. Lily, still half asleep, ran up and hugged his leg. Are you going away for a long time, Daddy? He patted her head. Just 4 months. Be a good girl for Mommy. I stood behind them, desperately wanting him to hold me tightly for a long time. Instead, he just patted my shoulder. Take care of my mom and Lily. Text me if anything happens. I nodded. The door closed, and the sound of the suitcase wheels faded into the foggy morning. For those 4 months, I kept serving food, paying off debts, raising my daughter, and checking in on Martha. Kevin sent back a few photos of historic university halls, vast libraries, and cocktail mixers with international academics. I looked at the photos, feeling both proud and entirely alienated. In the pictures, he wore a tailored blazer, a conference badge, and a confident smile. I, at that exact moment, was standing in a commercial kitchen, my shirt stained with grease, hair sticking to my forehead, holding a giant spatula. The phone calls grew scarce. At first, he talked about the food and the weather. Later, it was just rushed texts. I am busy. I have a presentation tomorrow. Wire me some more cash, unexpected expenses here. I wired it. I documented it. I filed it away. When he finally returned to the States, I thought he would rush straight to the diner, hug me and Lily, and tell us stories. But he stopped at our house, dropped his suitcase, and immediately drove to the university to meet his advisor. He did not come to the diner until late that night. Lily was so excited she jumped into his arms. He held her for a second, then put her down, saying he was exhausted. I set a plate of food in front of him. Slow-cooked pot roast, roasted carrots, and a fresh salad, all his old favorites. He took a few bites and put his fork down. My palate has adjusted. You salted the meat way too much. Standing next to him, my throat closed up. I did not know if the pot roast was actually too salty, or if the man returning from a long journey had simply acquired a taste for something I could never cook. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened the bottom drawer and looked at the brown canvas bag. It was thick now. Inside was the paperwork for the land I sold, my ultimate safety net. I placed my hand on the canvas, telling myself I did the right thing. In a marriage, if one person rises, the whole family rises. But deep down, a tiny ember of anxiety sparked. A very small ember, like a coal under ash. I was too terrified to blow on it, fearing it would ignite a truth I was not brave enough to face. Kevin had been back for a month when I realized he had fundamentally changed, not just in his clothes or the way he walked. Traveling abroad, seeing the world, and dressing sharper is normal. I am not petty enough to get upset over my husband wearing a nice shirt and cologne. I was glad he looked the part of a successful academic. The change was in his eyes. Before, when he walked into the diner and saw me at the stove, he smiled. If it was busy, he would roll up his sleeves, wipe tables, grab extra silverware, and joke with the factory guys to keep the mood light. Now, whenever he stopped by, he paused at the door, grimacing as if terrified the smell of fryer oil would cling to his clothes. One afternoon, I was pulling a fresh batch of fried chicken out of the oil when he walked in. He was wearing a crisp, light blue button-down with gleaming cuffs. I smiled brightly. "Have you eaten? I saved some pot roast and potatoes for you." He looked around. Several tables were packed with mechanics and factory workers. Utensils clattered, the wall fans rattled, and the heavy smell of gravy and grease hung in the air. He frowned. "Lower your voice. It is too loud in here." I froze. It was a blue-collar diner. How was it supposed to be as quiet as a library? People worked hard all morning, came in for a hot meal, and talked about their shifts, their kids, their overtime. He used to say the noise was comforting, that it had life. Now it was a nuisance. I kept my voice soft. "Go wash your hands in the back. I will set your plate." He brushed his sleeve lightly. "Never mind. I have a meeting on campus. I just came to grab a folder I left here." He walked past me to the back office. When he came out, he saw me holding a pair of metal tongs. His eyes fell on my hands cracked, stained with spices, a small burn scar on the wrist. He did not ask if I was in pain. He just said, "You should really pay more attention to your appearance. Lately, whenever someone sees you, you look like a total mess." I forced a laugh. I run a diner. If I did not look like a mess, my customers would think I wasn't actually cooking. I tried to make a joke of it, to lighten the mood. He did not smile. "I am being serious. I am going to be interacting with a lot of high-level people soon. You need to start making some changes." That sentence, though spoken quietly, sliced right through me. I did not know what I was supposed to change. My grease-stained shirt? My calloused hands? Or the entire life I had sacrificed to put him in those air-conditioned rooms where people spoke so politely? That afternoon, Martha visited the diner. She was wearing a deep purple velvet sweater, her hair sprayed perfectly in place. She handed me a bag of expensive coffee. "Here, you can brew this for yourself." I said, "Thank you, Mom." But she did not linger in the kitchen like she used to. She walked out to the front, spotted some acquaintances, and immediately beamed. "My Kevin is incredibly busy these days. The department head says he is a rising star. Once he defends his dissertation and gets that Ph.D., I could die happy." A customer joked, "Diana must be thrilled. Working the grill all these years, she finally gets to be the wife of a big shot." Martha glanced toward the kitchen, her tone a mix of backhanded praise and disdain. "Oh, Diana works hard. She is good at hovering over a stove. She does not understand much about Kevin's academic world, but as long as she brings in a paycheck, that is fine." I was chopping an onion, and the knife stopped dead on the cutting board. At first glance, it sounded normal, but the words "she does not understand much" stung like poison. I did not understand academic theory, that is true. I did not know how to format a bibliography, or write a peer-reviewed paper, or stand at a podium lecturing undergrads. But I understood exactly how much money Kevin needed. I understood exactly which week the bank loans were due. I understood that if the lunch rush was slow, I would not have enough to cover his conference fees. Why was my type of understanding considered so inferior? I wanted to shout back, but I clamped my mouth shut. Winning an argument does not change anything. It just makes the family dinner table colder. On Sunday night, Uncle Robert hosted a family dinner. I prepped a massive tray of baked ziti and garlic bread to bring over. The second I walked into the yard, Uncle Robert called Kevin over to sit with the men on the patio. I went straight to the kitchen to help the aunts set up. As I arranged the plates, I heard Uncle Robert's booming voice outside. "Kevin, you are playing in a different league now. Educated men need to manage their image. Wherever you go, your wife and kids need to look immaculate. If people look at you and see a sloppy household, it reflects poorly on the Ph.D. Another uncle chimed in. "Exactly. Running a diner is fine, but when she steps out, she needs to know how to dress and speak. Otherwise, you cannot bring her anywhere." The men chuckled. I stared at the tray of ziti, my face burning. Brenda, the market gossip, was also there because she was close to Martha. She stood near the kitchen doorway, chewing gum, and said loudly to my mother-in-law, "Martha, you need to prep for this. Your boy is highly educated. He will be rubbing elbows with city executives and politicians. If his wife stays holed up in a greasy kitchen smelling like fry oil, she is going to cost him points. Martha sighed dramatically. I think about it all the time, but if I say anything, I am the evil mother-in-law. My throat tightened so hard it physically hurt. Where did the fry oil smell come from? From the hundreds of burgers I flipped to pay for Kevin's tuition. Why did my hair smell like grease? Because I woke up before the sun to prep catering boxes to fund his European fellowship. And now, my smell was costing him points. After the dinner, Kevin drove me home. The country road was dark, the night air freezing. I sat in the passenger seat and asked quietly, "Did you hear what Uncle Robert and Brenda said back there?" He was silent for a few seconds. "They mean well." I smiled bitterly. "Meaning well by saying your wife reeks of the kitchen?" He let out an exasperated sigh. "Diana, stop being so sensitive. I just want you to be more aware. My circles are changing. There are faculty dinners, galas, and networking events. You cannot just show up in whatever you want." I asked, "Are you even going to invite me to those?" The car hit a pothole. He did not answer immediately. That silence was louder than a confession. After a moment, he muttered, "I just worry you would be uncomfortable. People talk about academic theory, and you would feel out of place." I stared out the window into the pitch black. I wanted to tell him that I might not understand academia, but I understood basic etiquette. I might not wear designer brands, but I had never done a single thing to humiliate him. But I did not say it. The lump in my throat was so massive I could only choke out one word. Okay. From then on, Kevin rarely invited me anywhere. Once, his department hosted a year-end banquet. I heard him making a reservation on the phone. I asked, "Do you need me to iron your dress shirt?" He replied, "Yeah, that would be great. I am going out with the department tonight." I waited for him to add, "You should come with me." But he did not. He just told me to make sure his leather shoes were polished. Lily was doing her homework at the table. She looked up and asked, "Daddy, are you going to a party? Why isn't Mommy going?" Kevin froze, then said, "Mommy is busy with the diner." Lily turned to me. "Mommy is always busy with the diner. But Daddy did not even ask you." The innocent observation of a child made the entire room drop into a deafening silence. I quickly patted her head. "Finish your homework, Lily. Grown-ups have grown-up things to do." Kevin grabbed his phone and walked outside, avoiding my eyes. That night, when he came home from the banquet, his clothes smelled like an expensive restaurant, air conditioning, and a faint, unfamiliar perfume. I had just finished closing the diner and smelled like bleach and exhausted kitchen air. He walked past me and whispered, "Go take a shower. You smell like a deep fryer." I stood frozen in the hallway. Years ago, he used to hug me from behind while I was cooking and tell me the smell of home-cooked food was his favorite scent in the world. Now, that exact same scent made him flinch. I walked into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back had her hair in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes, a faded t-shirt, and calloused hands. I touched my own face, feeling like a stranger. Did I let myself age too fast, or did the man beside me change so drastically that looking at me was an eyesore? I did not lash out at him right away. I still tried to understand. I told myself academic pressure was getting to him. I told myself he wanted me to be better. I told myself he was just clumsy with words. When a woman is still in love, she is a master at patching holes. A thoughtless comment? Patch it with, "He is tired." A cold stare? Patch it with, "He is stressed." Being left behind? Patch it with, "He is busy." You patch and patch until you look down and realize the garment of your marriage is nothing but jagged stitches, and it is still falling apart. But at that time, I did not have the courage to admit it. I kept waking up early to cook, kept transferring money when he needed it, kept calling Martha Mom, kept teaching Lily to love her father. The only difference was the brown canvas bag in the bottom drawer getting thicker, while my spirit grew thinner, and in that house I began to learn a bitter truth. People do not usually abandon you overnight. They push you away an inch at a time, and once the distance is far enough, they turn around and say you were simply on different paths. The name Victoria first reached my ears on a late autumn evening. Kevin came home very late. I had already put the dinner away. The pot roast had been reheated twice. The vegetables were limp. He sat down at the table, his phone placed face up next to his plate. The screen lit up several times, displaying the name Victoria, faculty. He glanced at it, then flipped the phone face down. I asked gently, "Who is texting this late?" He took a bite of food and answered casually, "Just a colleague from the department. We are discussing a panel for a conference." I nodded. People in academia work odd hours. Having colleagues text is normal. I did not want to become a paranoid, jealous wife. A woman who acts crazy over nothing just tortures herself and exhausts her husband. I told myself that, but then the name appeared more and more. Sometimes, while sitting in the living room, his phone would vibrate, and he would get up and walk to the porch to take the call. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night, see the glow of his screen illuminating his face, and catch him smiling. The second I shifted in bed, he locked the screen. Once, I asked, "You are texting really late these days." He pulled the blanket up, his voice annoyed. "You do not understand my work. Papers, peer reviews, revisions, when we have time, we collaborate. Do not add pressure to my life with nonsense." I went quiet. Ever since he started his higher education, the phrase "you do not understand" became the lid he slammed on every question I had. I did not understand academia. I did not understand research pressure. I did not understand how professionals communicated. If I asked a question, he just deployed "you do not understand," and instantly, I was the one in the wrong. I swallowed it down because I was still terrified of falsely accusing my husband. Then, on a Friday afternoon, while I was boxing up a catering order for the factory, my phone pinged with a new email. It was an old shared family email account we created right after getting married, mostly used for utility bills, flight confirmations, and random spam. I opened it quickly, thinking it was the internet bill. On the screen was a flight and hotel confirmation for an academic conference in Chicago. Guest 1, Dr. Kevin. Guest 2, Victoria. Same flight, same departure, same return, same hotel room where the conference was held. I stood paralyzed in the middle of the kitchen, holding a pair of tongs, completely forgetting to close the takeout box. Helen saw my face drain of color and rushed over. "Diana, what is wrong?" I locked the screen, struggling to speak. "Nothing, Helen. I just felt dizzy for a second." But my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. That night, I waited for Kevin to get home. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply printed the confirmation and placed it on the dining table. He took off his watch, saw the paper, and his face shifted slightly. I asked, "Are you going to Chicago with Victoria?" He picked up the paper, scowling. "Why are you snooping through my emails?" "It was sent to the shared family account. I did not snoop." He dropped the paper on the table, his voice turning cold. "It is a department conference. Several people are going, not just me and Victoria." I stared at the confirmation. "This receipt only has your name and hers. Administrative staff booked it in small groups. You see one piece of paper and let your imagination run wild. It is exhausting." I tried to stay perfectly calm. I am not imagining things. I just want an honest explanation. He let out a condescending scoff. It did not sound like the husband who once feared hurting my feelings. It sounded like a superior annoyed by a peasant. "Diana, stop bringing your flea market mentality into an academic environment. Educated professionals travel together. It does not mean there is a scandal like you think." I went numb. Flea market mentality. Those words hit me harder than a physical slap. The flea market he referenced was the place where I woke up in the freezing dark to buy bulk groceries. That flea market funded his exams, paid his rent, bought his books. The flea market mentality he despised was currently paying the credit card bill for the very conference he was so proud of attending. I looked at him, my voice turning gravelly. "Are you saying you look down on me?" He looked away. "I do not look down on you. I am just saying stop making a mess out of nothing. I am at a crucial stage in my career. Can you stop being so overly sensitive?" I smiled weakly. Sensitive. So when a wife notices her husband changing, hiding his phone, traveling with another woman, and coming home smelling like perfume, asking a single question makes her sensitive. I stopped arguing. I folded the confirmation receipt and placed it in the brown canvas bag. The sound of the zipper was faint, but inside my heart, a heavy steel door slammed shut. From that day forward, I became observant. I noticed that whenever Kevin texted, his face softened in a way it had not softened for me in years. I noticed he changed his phone password, bought new cologne, and came home late more frequently. I also noticed that whenever I brought up Lily, his answers were brief, but if his phone lit up, he was instantly engaged. One night, I brought a glass of water into his home office. The door was cracked open. I heard him on the phone, his voice low and warm. "Yeah, Victoria, send me the draft. I will review it first thing. Do not stay up too late." Just one sentence, "do not stay up too late," and my chest felt like it was caving in. He had not said that to me in half a decade. I stood outside the door, holding the glass of water, realizing I was a ghost in my own home. I walked back to the kitchen and set the glass down. The stove was cold. I wanted to cry, but the tears simply would not come. If it were you, seeing the partner who once ate cold leftovers with you suddenly speaking with extreme tenderness to someone else, while looking at you with irritation and disgust, what would you do? A few days later, Lily asked me, Mommy, who is Victoria? Why does Daddy text her so much? I froze. How do you know Victoria? I saw her name on Daddy's phone. When I asked him, he told me kids shouldn't look at grown-ups' phones. I pulled my daughter into my arms and rubbed her back. She is a lady Daddy works with. Lily looked up at me. Does working with her make Daddy happy? That innocent question choked me so entirely I could not answer. I just hugged her tighter, listening to the rain outside. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I opened the brown canvas bag. It was stuffed with years of documents. I placed the Chicago confirmation in a separate folder, not because I wanted to catch him in a lie, but because I finally understood that I could no longer survive on blind faith. Trust is like a hot bowl of soup. It keeps you warm. But once someone knocks it onto the floor, you cannot scoop it back up, blow the dirt off, and pretend it is clean. I did not make a scene. I kept cooking, kept running the diner, kept calling Martha Mom, and kept providing a stable roof for Lily. But inside, the husband who once held my hand on the porch had vanished. He was so far gone that on the nights we laid in the same bed, listening to him breathe, I felt as utterly alone as I did standing in the freezing wholesale market at 4:00 a.m. After the Chicago incident, the temperature in the house plummeted. Kevin rarely ate dinner at home. If I saved him a plate, he would come in late and say he already grabbed food with colleagues. If Lily stayed up waiting for him and fell asleep at the kitchen table, he would walk in, glance at her, and tell me, "Do not let her stay up. I do not need anyone waiting up for me." My heart sank. Years ago, he loved having someone wait for him. Now, my daughter and I were just a nuisance. Martha also changed her tune. She used to call me daughter in front of the neighbors. Lately, she just called me Diana, or sometimes just you. A small shift, but the distance was staggering. I kept my manners because I had done nothing wrong and did not want anyone calling me disrespectful. But the more I endured, the further she pushed. One afternoon, right after the lunch rush, Martha walked into the diner. She was wearing a navy blue peacoat, clutching a black leather purse. She looked around and said, "Close the blinds. We need to talk." I wiped my hands and asked Helen to run to the store to get some herbs so we could have privacy. Martha sat at a corner table, reached into her purse, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Read this and sign it." I picked it up. It was typed. It was a drafted agreement stating that in the event of marital issues, I voluntarily agreed not to mention or claim any financial contributions made toward Kevin's education, so as not to damage his reputation, career, or academic future. At the bottom was a line for my signature and the date. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I looked up at her. "What is this for?" Martha looked at me, the sweet mother-in-law facade entirely gone. "To protect the family's dignity. Kevin is about to defend his dissertation. His career is taking off. Whatever happens between you two, you are not allowed to use money to drag his name through the mud." I set the paper down on the table, forcing my voice to remain calm. I never said I was going to drag his name through the mud, but the money I spent over the years is a fact. "Why are you forcing me to sign a gag order?" Martha scowled. "So you do want to hold it over his head. Husband and wife share everything. He is highly educated. You will benefit from his success. Do not hoard a few receipts and act like you are a savior." I stared at my hands resting on the table, hands that permanently smelled of onions, a faded burn scar on my wrist. I asked quietly, "If we share everything, why am I the only one signing a contract? Why doesn't Kevin sign a paper saying that no matter what happens, he will never deny his wife's sacrifices?" Martha's face hardened. "Your attitude is getting unbearable. A smart woman stands behind her husband. Kevin is not the broke adjunct he used to be. He is going to be a PhD. If you make a scene, you will make yourself a laughingstock." I smiled sadly. Will they laugh at me for telling the truth, or laugh at this family for being terrified of the truth? Martha slapped her hand lightly on the table. "Stop arguing. Just sign it so I can sleep at night." I slid the paper back to her. "I married Kevin out of love, not to be bound by a gag order. If you want to sleep at night, tell your son to act like a husband so his wife doesn't have his heart broken. Do not force me to sign away my voice." Martha glared at me. "Fine. Do not sign it. But do not blame me when things get ugly." She stood up and walked out. Watching her leave, I realized my hands were shaking. When Kevin came home that night, I asked him, "Your mother handed me a contract today. Did you know about it?" He froze while loosening his tie, then continued, "My mom is just looking out for everyone." I stared at him. "So you knew." He exhaled sharply. "Diana, do not make this a massive issue. My mom is right to be cautious. I am about to defend my dissertation. I cannot have family drama ruining my focus. My throat locked. Family drama? You mean me? He went silent. That silence was all the answer I needed. A few days later, I started noticing strange looks at the market. When I walked up to the butcher, the women gossiping instantly went quiet. At the produce stand, someone smirked at me. I thought I was being paranoid until the lady selling eggs pulled me aside. Diana, let me ask you straight. Is something going on between you and Frank? I froze. Frank? What do you mean? She hesitated. Well, the rumor going around is that your husband is always away, and you have been getting awfully close to Frank, the delivery guy. I do not believe it, but everyone is talking. I stood paralyzed in the middle of the market. The smell of raw fish, wilting lettuce, and the noise of the crowd blurred into white noise. Frank was the guy who delivered our bulk flour and potatoes for the past 3 years. He had a wife named Sarah who ran a hardware store, and 2 kids. Because I had a bad back, he sometimes carried the heavy sacks directly into the pantry. If Helen was busy, he helped push the carts. That was it. And somehow, through the grapevine, specifically Brenda's mouth, it had morphed into a scandalous affair. I asked the egg lady, "Who said this?" She lowered her voice. Brenda was hinting at it. She said it looks bad for a married woman whose husband travels to have another man lingering around the back of her diner. I smiled bitterly. So, they did not just want me to sign away my financial claims. They wanted to destroy my reputation first. That way, when Kevin dumped me, everyone would say, well, Diana was cheating anyway. That afternoon, when Frank dropped off a delivery, he was his usual friendly self, sweating in his work shirt. Diana, I'll haul these to the back for you. I stopped him, feeling incredibly guilty for dragging an innocent man into my nightmare. Frank, from now on, just leave them by the door. Helen and I will get them. It is not that I do not appreciate it, but people at the market are starting rumors. I do not want to cause trouble for your wife and kids. Frank stopped dead, his face turning red with anger. Who is saying that? I do my job, my wife knows my route. Do these people have nothing better to do? Helen sighed from the counter. Gossip is a venom, Frank. A straight tree does not fear the wind, but it still hurts when people carve lies into the bark. Hearing her say that made my eyes burn. That night, I started a new notebook. I wrote down the date, the rumor, who told me, and what Brenda originally said. I did not blow up right away. I knew that fighting with gossips in a public market only gives them more entertainment. I kept going to the market, kept cooking, kept saying hello to Martha when I saw her. But inside, a wire had snapped. In the past, I endured to save my marriage. Now I realized this wasn't a marriage anymore. They were actively building a case to throw me out on the street with nothing. If I stayed silent, I would not just lose my husband and my reputation, I would lose the diner that fed my child. That night, I took the photo I snapped of Martha's gag order and put it in the brown canvas bag. I zipped it up. I was terrified and I was hurt, but I was no longer a victim waiting for the axe to fall. After the contract incident and the rumors about Frank, I started analyzing every single move they made. I used to trust Kevin blindly. Now, every text, every look, every silence made me question his endgame. The answer arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. The diner was slammed with the lunch rush from the Apex plant. Helen and I were frantically boxing up meals. The phone rang. It was Heather, the HR manager at the plant who handled our catering contract. I pinned the phone to my shoulder. Hey Heather, are we missing a box today? She sounded hesitant. No, the food is perfect. I am just calling to double-check something. Did you authorize changing the direct deposit for the catering contract to Kevin's account starting next month? My hand froze. The ladle tilted, spilling hot gravy down the side of a styrofoam box. Excuse me? Kevin emailed me. He said the diner is restructuring its finances and he wants the payments routed to his account to professionalize the bookkeeping. He said he is stepping in as the business manager. My ears started ringing. The commercial lease was in my name. The LLC was mine. I cooked the food, signed the contracts, paid the taxes. From day one, every cent went through my business account. And my husband went behind my back to intercept my largest corporate client. I forced myself to stay calm. No, Heather, I have not authorized any changes. Could you forward me the email he sent you? Heather paused, then spoke softly. I thought it was weird, which is why I called. You are the vendor on file. You cannot just swap accounts without new W-9s anyway. Thank you, Heather. I hung up. A minute later, the screenshot arrived. I read Kevin's exact words. Starting the first, please route all catering invoices to the routing number below. I am Diana's husband and will be taking over the financial management of the diner to streamline our operations. Taking over financial management, those words felt like a serrated knife. He had never asked me about the margins. He had never looked at the profit and loss statements. He had not touched a greasy pot in years. But now that the diner had a massive, stable corporate contract, he suddenly wanted to streamline operations. Helen saw my face. What happened? I showed her the email. Her face darkened. Diana, this is a hostile takeover. I nodded, my throat tight. I closed the diner an hour early. I asked Helen to watch Lily, and I walked 2 blocks down to see Mr. Thomas, the landlord who owned my building. Mr. Thomas was a kind man in his 60s. He poured me a cup of coffee. Diana, what brings you by? I cut straight to the chase. Mr. Thomas, has Kevin been by to talk to you recently? He looked surprised. Yeah, he was here last week. He asked how much time was left on your lease. He said you two were looking to expand and wanted to put the lease in his name to make it easier to get a bank loan. I told him the lease is in your name, and any changes need your signature. Watch your back, Diana. Business is business, even in a marriage. Make sure you two are on the same page. I thanked him, my hands trembling. Walking back to the diner, the wind chilled me to the bone. Kevin had not just emailed HR. He had gone to my landlord. He was methodically trying to cut me out of my own business. That night, when he came home, I watched him closely. He ate dinner quickly and then casually asked, "Hey, where did you put the LLC registration for the diner?" I set my fork down. "Why do you need it?" He replied smoothly. "I was going to talk to the bank about a commercial expansion loan. I need to review the paperwork." I looked at the man sitting across from me. This was the face I trusted more than anything in the world. Now, I did not know how much pure calculation hid behind those calm eyes. I spoke slowly. "The paperwork is in the safe with my tax returns. If I need a loan, I will go to the bank myself." He frowned. "You always hoard everything. I am your husband. What is wrong with me looking at the paperwork?" I smiled, a tight, cold smile. Nothing is wrong with looking. But intercepting my corporate client to change the direct deposit routing without my permission? That is wrong. His face drained of color instantly. "Heather told you. She was doing her job. The contract is with me." He slammed his hand on the table, getting defensive. "I was trying to help you. You run this place out of a shoebox with manual ledgers. I have a business background. I can make it professional." The arrogance made me sick. I stared right into his eyes. "This unprofessional shoebox paid your tuition. When the roof leaked, you didn't care how the ledger was run. Now that I have a massive corporate contract, you suddenly want to step in?" He stood up. "You are impossible to talk to." "No, I am just finally talking back." He stormed off into the bedroom. The door slammed, startling Lily, who was drawing at the coffee table. She looked at me. "Are you and Daddy fighting?" I rubbed her back. "No, sweetie. Grown-ups are just talking about numbers." She looked down, her eyes sad. My heart broke. Kids do not understand the words, but they feel the ice in the room. That night, after Lily was asleep, I called Helen over. We sat in the dark diner under a single yellow bulb, pulling out every master file. The LLC registration. Diana. The commercial lease. Diana. The Apex plant catering contract. Diana. The bank accounts. Diana. Helen tapped the files. "Legally, he cannot touch this, but you need to hide the originals." I nodded. Then, remembering something, I grabbed Kevin's briefcase, which he had left on a chair the day prior. I did not make a habit of going through his things, but right now it was survival. Inside was a printed bank application, some notes, and at the bottom, a photocopy of a power of attorney. I pulled it out, my heart stopped. It was a document granting Kevin full legal authority to act on behalf of Diana regarding the business operations, banking, and real estate of Diana's Comfort Diner. At the bottom was a signature that looked exactly like mine. I had never signed this document. Helen gasped. "Diana, this is forgery. This is a felony." I took a deep breath, forcing my panic down. "It is a photocopy. I cannot prove he used it yet, but I am taking a picture of it. If I have to, I will demand a handwriting expert." I set the paper back exactly how I found it. My world had collapsed. The worst thing wasn't the other woman. The worst thing wasn't the mother-in-law. The worst thing was realizing the man I called my husband wasn't just trying to leave me, he was actively plotting to steal the food out of his daughter's mouth. Helen grabbed my hands. "What are you going to do?" I looked around the diner. The scuffed chairs, the glass case I Windexed every morning, the corner where Lily colored. This place was not fancy, but it was my blood, my youth, my survival. I whispered, but my voice was like iron. "I am not blowing this up tonight, but from this second forward, nobody takes another goddamn thing from me." I moved the original documents to a safe deposit box the next morning. I gave Helen copies. I documented Heather's email, Mr. Thomas's statement, and the forged POA photo. When I zipped the brown canvas bag that night, I no longer felt small. I was terrified, and I was heartbroken, but I was done enduring. Some predators only attack when they think you are going to lay down and take it. The day Kevin called to tell me he successfully defended his dissertation, I was standing behind the counter slicing roast beef. My phone buzzed, and before I could even say hello, his voice boomed. Diana, I passed. I am done. I stood perfectly still. The knife rested on the cutting board. Years of exhaustion, of balancing ledgers at 2:00 a.m., of borrowing from Helen to pay tuition, of freezing in the market. It all flooded over me. I thought I would cry tears of joy, but I felt nothing. Just a massive hollow void. I said, "That is good. Congratulations." He paused, clearly taken aback by my flat tone, but quickly recovered. Mom is ecstatic. Uncle Robert says we have to throw a massive party. This is a historic day for the family. The family. I had heard that phrase so many times. When the bills were due, it was, you have to work hard. When the glory arrived, it was the family's historic day. I smiled bitterly. Whatever you and Mom want to plan, let me know what you need. I did not say that because I was naive. I said it because, despite everything, getting a PhD is a massive achievement. I did not want to be the bitter wife ruining his milestone. Sometimes a woman will suffer absolute hell but still try to preserve one last shred of dignity for her household. Martha, of course, acted like she had won the lottery. That afternoon, she paraded through the flea market, stopping at every stall. My Kevin passed. He is Dr. Kevin now. Every hardship in my life was worth it. I can die happy. A vendor joked, Diana must be over the moon. She funded the whole thing. Martha's face tightened, then she forced a laugh. Oh, she works hard. But the real blessing is my family's genetics. Kevin has been brilliant since he was a boy. I heard about this later from another vendor. I just stood by the sink, washing lettuce. The cold water stung my hands, but not as much as my heart. I was so used to my sacrifices being erased by the family genetics. Uncle Robert took charge of the party. He called everyone, his voice echoing with authority. We are doing this right. It is not every day a blue-collar family produces a doctor. Invite the neighbors, invite the church group, invite his professors. Brenda, the gossip, was buzzing around Martha's house, helping order tents, tables, and a massive vinyl banner that read, "Congratulations, Dr. Kevin." She even told Martha, "Make sure everyone sees how successful your family is. And keep Diana in the back, she will just embarrass him." The embarrassment was currently paying for the whole thing. I ordered the catering from a nicer place: BBQ ribs, brisket, smoked chicken, potato salad, baked beans. I bought Kevin a brand new navy blue suit because his old one was getting shiny at the elbows. I bought Martha a beautiful deep plum dress. She tried it on in the mirror, twirling around, unable to hide her grin. "You did all right with this," she told me. "Not thank you, daughter. Just you did all right." I was no longer waiting for gratitude. Lily saw me ironing Kevin's new shirt and ran over. "Mommy, are we having a giant party tomorrow?" I nodded. "Yes, Daddy finished his big test. Everyone is coming to celebrate." She rested her chin on her hands. "Are you going to wear a pretty dress?" I paused. The steam from the iron hit my face. "I have to manage the food in the back, baby," she frowned. "Why are you always in the back? Daddy is being celebrated. You should be celebrated too. You cooked the food that paid for his school." I turned my head away, pretending to check the collar. Kids blurt out the truths adults pretend not to see. I smoothed her hair. "You just wear your pretty dress and stand next to Daddy tomorrow, okay?" She pouted. "I want to stand next to you." My heart broke. The night before the party, Kevin came home early. He tried on the suit. Looking at him in the mirror, I remembered the adjunct professor with the frayed cuffs. The man in the mirror was polished, confident, and completely alien. He turned to me. "Tomorrow, the faculty is coming. Professor Vance, the department chair, some administration folks." I replied, "I know." I ordered extra appetizers and set up a nice drink station for them. He nodded, then hesitated. "Tomorrow, you should probably just stay in the kitchen and help Mom coordinate the food. I will call you out when I need you to say hello." I looked at him, meaning, "I am not allowed to sit next to you under the tent." He avoided my eyes. "It is not like that. It is just. There are a lot of VIPs. It is easier if you manage the back. Plus, Mom needs the help." I let out a dry, silent laugh. I bought the food. I paid the bill. It is my husband's party. But I am relegated to the kitchen until called upon. His face flushed. "Diana, do not dissect every word. I just want the day to go smoothly." "Smoothly for who?" I asked. "Smoothly so you do not have to introduce your diner-owning wife to your elite professors?" He fell silent. That silence again. The silence that answered everything. I did not argue. I walked into the diner, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the brown canvas bag. I added the newest printouts. Heather's emails, Mr. Thomas's statement, the forged POA. I zipped it up and locked it in a small fireproof box in my bedroom. That night, I could not sleep. Outside, guys were setting up the party tent, testing the PA system. Hammers clacked. Martha was buzzing around, directing people. She sounded so triumphant. I sat next to my sleeping daughter. I asked myself, if tomorrow went smoothly, would I keep enduring? If they kept me in the kitchen, took all the credit, and treated me like a ghost, could I live like that? The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds. Martha's backyard was packed. Tables with red tablecloths stretched from the porch to the fence. The banner, "Congratulations, Doctor," Kevin gleamed in the sun. Martha wore her plum dress, greeting everyone at the gate. Uncle Robert was holding a beer, laughing and shaking hands. I wore a simple black blouse and slacks, my hair tied back, standing behind the buffet tables, making sure the chafing dishes were full. The smell of barbecue smoke and onions clung to me. Helen looked at me with pity. "Are you okay, Diana?" I smiled. "I am fine, Helen. I am used to it." But I wasn't fine. No one is fine being erased from their own life's work. The yard was packed. Kevin sat at the center table with Professor Vance and the faculty. He looked incredibly humble, but his eyes were shining with pride. A female professor looked around and asked, "Where is your wife, Kevin? She must be so proud." I was walking toward the table with a tray of fresh cornbread when Brenda chuckled loudly from the next table. "Oh, Diana is used to the kitchen. She is shy around crowds. Plus, if she is not back there, the food will burn." It sounded like a joke, but it stopped me in my tracks. I wasn't shy. I was intentionally hidden, so no one would be reminded that this PhD was funded by a woman who smelled like a deep fryer. Midway through the party, after toasts were made, Martha stood up. She looked directly at the buffet station. "Diana, come out here." The entire yard fell silent. I put down the tray of cornbread, wiped my hands on a towel, and took a deep breath. Helen grabbed my wrist. "Want me to come with you?" I shook my head. I walked into the center of the yard. Hundreds of eyes locked onto me. Compared to the tailored suits and dresses, I looked exactly like what I was, the kitchen help. Martha pointed to a spot near the main table. "Stand there. Not come sit down. Stand there." She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a manila folder. She slapped it onto the table. "Today, with all our family, friends, and Kevin's esteemed professors here, I want to make something clear. Kevin is a doctor now. His future is limitless. But Diana, you only know the diner and the kitchen. Your intellect cannot keep up with him. You two are mismatched. I think it is best for both of you if you sign these divorce papers today and part amicably to save face." The blood rushed out of my head. I stared at the papers. Divorce decree. The signature line was blank. They had prepped this. They waited until the exact moment he got his degree, in front of a massive crowd, to ambush me into signing. An aunt muttered, "It is harsh, but true. A PhD needs a wife who can elevate him. Diana is a hard worker, but it is not a fit." Brenda chimed in, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Diana, you have your diner. Just let him go." A smart woman knows when to step aside without making a scene. Every word hit me like a physical blow. Years of waking up at 4:00 a.m., funding his tuition, selling my jewelry, running my body into the ground. Reduced to you only know the kitchen. Uncle Robert stood up, crossing his arms like a judge. "Diana, listen to reason. Kevin is in a different stratosphere now. He is not the broke kid he used to be. Sign the papers and do not ruin this historic day for the family." I looked up at him. "You want me to preserve the family's historic day by letting you publicly humiliate me in the backyard?" Uncle Robert scowled. "Do not be dramatic. The adults are having a logical conversation." I laughed. "A logical conversation where you hold the papers and I get dragged out of the kitchen to sign my life away?" The crowd murmured. Several neighbors looked uncomfortable. At the faculty table, Professor Vance set his drink down, his expression turning grim. I turned to Kevin. He was staring at his water glass. The man who once said he could not have a future without me could not even look me in the eye. "Kevin," I said clearly, "do you agree with this?" The yard was dead silent. He looked up, his jaw tight. I wanted him to stand up, rip the papers, and defend his wife. He did not. He exhaled heavily. "Diana, I know you worked hard. I do not deny that. But my mom makes a valid point. We are completely different people now. My world requires someone who can truly walk beside me, who understands my life. I felt like I was falling down an endless elevator shaft. So the last 7 years, I wasn't walking beside you?" He looked away, You helped me. But helping is not the same as being an equal partner. Helping. I wanted to scream. I was the bank. I was the ATM. I was the maid. An equal partner, to him, was someone in a cocktail dress at a symposium, not the woman paying the entry fee. Lily was standing near the edge of the tent, clutching Helen's leg, crying silently. Seeing my daughter's face broke whatever restraint I had left. I looked around at the sneering relatives, the gossiping neighbors, the people who ate my food and took my money. I stepped forward, picked up the divorce papers, and looked at Martha. Her eyes lit up, thinking I was giving in. I set the papers back down. I untied my apron and dropped it next to the folder. My voice was eerily calm. You played your cards a bit too early. Martha recoiled. What did you just say? I looked at her, then at Kevin. If you wanted to do this publicly to destroy my dignity, then let's do it fully. I have a few things I want the whole crowd to see. I turned around and walked into the house. Every step on the hardwood floor echoed. I walked into my bedroom, opened the lockbox, and pulled out the brown canvas bag. It was faded, the zipper chipped, but it was the heaviest thing I owned. I walked back out to the yard. The silence was suffocating. Martha looked furious. Uncle Robert looked confused. But Kevin looked terrified. He recognized the bag. I slammed the bag onto the table right next to the divorce papers. The zipper rasped loudly in the quiet yard. I pulled out the first stack of papers. This is the pawn shop receipt for $1,200. I sold my gold wedding earrings so Kevin could pay for his PhD prep courses. He was an adjunct making nothing. I didn't tell my parents because I didn't want them to worry. Martha tried to interrupt. Spouses help each other. Why are you bringing this up? I stared her down. Because at the memorial dinner 5 years ago, you told this entire family that you funded his exams. People in the crowd shifted. An aunt looked down in shame. I pulled out the next stack. These are bank transfers. 3 years of tuition, train tickets to Boston, hotel rooms, textbooks, laptop. I held up the pages, showing the Venmo receipts, the bank wire confirmations, the text messages from Kevin begging for money. I slammed them down. Kevin stood up, his voice shaking. Diana, what are you doing? This is my graduation party. I turned to him. Your graduation was bought with my blood. You let your mother slide divorce papers in my face in public. Did you think about my feelings? He choked on his words. I pulled out the thickest folder, bound with a binder clip. This is a $30,000 commercial loan I took out. The diner paid the interest. The principal paid for his dissertation printing, his research data, and his conference fees. Here is the ledger. I dropped it. Brenda sneered from the back. Keeping a ledger on your husband. What a calculating bitch. I locked eyes with her. I calculated so my husband could study, my daughter could eat, and the bank wouldn't foreclose on my business. A woman who calculates to survive is better than a leech who plots to steal. Brenda shut her mouth instantly. Then I pulled out a plastic sleeve. This is the deed of sale for a lakeside property my parents gave me. I sold it for $35,000 to fund Kevin's 4-month fellowship in Europe. My dad is not here today. Thank God he is not, because if he heard you call me a kitchen rat after I sold my inheritance for this man, it would kill him. I dropped the property records and the wire transfers onto the table. The crowd was utterly paralyzed. The people who had told me to step aside were now staring at their shoes. Martha's face was chalk white. She stammered, You did your duty as a wife. There is no need to make a scene. I laughed. Doing my duty is paying for his life. But when he succeeds, your duty is to throw me out? Uncle Robert cleared his throat, trying to salvage the disaster. Diana, financial matters should be discussed in private. You are airing dirty laundry. I smiled sweetly. Uncle Robert, when you demanded I sign divorce papers in front of 100 people, were you worried about dirty laundry? Or did you just assume I wouldn't fight back? He had no response. At the faculty table, Professor Vance slowly stood up. He looked at Kevin with absolute disgust. Kevin, I thought you were a man of integrity. If these documents are real, this woman didn't just support you. She carried you on her back. Kevin looked at the ground, his face pale. Professor Vance's voice rang out over the yard. A PhD. Doesn't make you a better man if you don't even have the basic decency to honor the person who sacrificed for you. He threw his napkin on the table and walked out. Several other faculty members immediately followed him. No one said goodbye to Kevin. But I wasn't done. I pulled out a thin envelope. Kevin saw it and panic finally broke his composure. Diana, there are limits. I nodded. Yes. The limit was when you tried to throw me away. I opened the envelope and pulled out the Chicago flight and hotel confirmation. Guest 1, Dr. Kevin. Guest 2, Victoria. I didn't yell. I just laid it on top of the pile. A shockwave went through the crowd. I pulled out the printed text messages. I won't read the disgusting romantic texts in front of my daughter, but I will read this one. Kevin texted Victoria, "Once I defend, I will handle the divorce. My mom says Diana won't fight back. She is just a diner cook. She will be too scared of the scandal." Martha gasped. Kevin grabbed the edge of the table. "You hacked my phone." "I didn't hack anything. You left your iPad synced to the family iCloud. You were so arrogant you didn't even bother to hide it properly." Finally, I pulled out the business documents. "This is my LLC. This is my lease. This is my catering contract. All in my name, and this," I held up the photocopy, "is the forged power of attorney Kevin created to try and seize control of my bank accounts and my diner. He emailed my corporate clients attempting to redirect my revenue to his personal account." The crowd erupted into genuine outrage. A neighbor shouted, "That is not just cheating, that is theft." Kevin was hyperventilating. "I was trying to help the business." I slammed my hand on the table. "You tried to steal the business that fed you. You understand the law, Kevin. Forgery and wire fraud aren't things you can fix with an apology." The party was entirely dead. The remaining guests were practically sprinting to their cars to escape the fallout. Uncle Robert collapsed into a chair, his patriarchal authority shattered. Brenda was hiding behind a tent pole. Martha stood frozen, her plum dress looking ridiculous amidst the ruins of her son's reputation. Kevin stepped toward me, his voice a pathetic croak. "Diana, please. Let's talk inside." I stepped back. "No. You wanted an audience. Now you have one." I packed my papers back into the brown canvas bag, slowly and deliberately. Zipping it up felt like closing a tomb. I looked at Kevin one last time. "You said I wasn't an equal partner. You're right. An equal partner stands beside you. I was the foundation you stood on. Good luck finding a foundation in Victoria." I picked up my bag, grabbed Lily's hand, and walked out of the yard. Behind me, the PA system was still softly playing celebratory jazz, completely absurd in the dead silence of the ruined party. I walked away, my spine straight, holding my daughter's hand. It hurt, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. After that day, I took Lily to the diner. Helen locked the doors, made me a cup of hot tea, and fed Lily some soup. Lily clung to me all night. She didn't understand everything, but she knew her parents were broken. She whispered, "Mommy, does Daddy hate us?" I choked back a sob. "Daddy made bad choices, but Mommy loves you forever. Nothing changes that." She buried her face in my neck. "I don't like it when they call you a kitchen woman." I kissed her head, letting my tears finally fall. 2 days later, Kevin came to the diner. He looked destroyed. His suit was gone, he wore a wrinkled shirt. The diner was full, and when he walked in, the entire room went dead silent. The factory workers glared at him. The story had spread. I met him on the front porch. He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. "Diana, I was wrong." I looked at him. The man who had sat in the yard and let his mother humiliate me was now begging. "Where were you wrong?" He swallowed hard. I let the pressure get to me. My mom, the faculty, Victoria. I lost my way, but I never actually crossed the line with Victoria physically. I smiled a dead smile. "You still want to minimize it? You plotted to steal my business. You forged my signature. You let your mother hand me divorce papers in public. You lost me not because of your mother or Victoria. You lost me because of you." He tried to grab my hand. "Please. For Lily." I pulled my hand back. "Do not use my daughter as a hostage. A decent man protects his wife. A coward throws her under the bus to save his own ego. We are done." He stood there weeping, but I turned around and walked back inside. The gossip didn't stop immediately. Brenda tried to spin a rumor that I only blew up the party because I was sleeping with Frank, the delivery guy. I didn't let it slide this time. I invited the market manager, Frank, his wife Sarah, and a few respected elders to Brenda's stall. Sarah, a fiery woman, got right in Brenda's face. "You say my husband is messing around? Show me the proof, or I am suing you for slander right here, right now." Brenda stuttered and panicked. I just heard rumors." I stepped forward. "Your rumors attack my livelihood and Frank's family. If I hear my name in your mouth again, I am filing a police report for harassment." Martha was standing nearby, pale as a ghost, refusing to make eye contact. I looked at her. "Mom, I will still call you Mom because you are Lily's grandmother. But if you or your friends ever try to destroy my business again, I will not hold back." The market was silent. Brenda never spoke my name again. When you stand up straight, the wolves realize you aren't an easy meal. The divorce was brutal but clean. I didn't sign away a single cent. The diner, the LLC, the accounts, they all stayed mine. Kevin had to sign a legal injunction barring him from contacting my vendors or landlord. I got full physical custody of Lily. He got visitation, but I made it clear. He was to respect me in front of her or he wouldn't see her. Victoria dumped him the week after the party. She didn't want the baggage of a disgraced academic. Kevin kept his PhD, but his reputation was permanently stained. The faculty treated him like a pariah. A year later, I renovated the diner. We raised the roof, installed better AC, put in retro stainless steel tables, and painted the walls a bright, clean white. Helen became my official manager. The menu stayed the same: pot roast, fried chicken, meatloaf, mac and cheese. An old factory worker finished his plate one afternoon, wiped his mouth, and said, "Diana, your food doesn't taste like a fancy restaurant. It tastes like home. It fixes a bad day." Hearing that, my eyes watered. The smell of the kitchen that my ex-husband had despised was the exact thing that saved my life and fed my child. There is no such thing as a low-class job. Only low-class people who eat the food and then mock the chef. One night, while we were closing up, Lily was wiping down a table. She looked at me and asked, "Mommy, is being a kitchen woman a bad thing?" I stopped wiping the counter. I pulled her into a hug. "No, baby. A kitchen is where you feed people, where you keep them warm, where you build a life. The only bad thing is eating the food and disrespecting the woman who cooked it." She smiled. "Then you are the best woman." I kissed her forehead. That night, sitting on the porch of my diner, I looked at the neon sign glowing in the dark. I used to think losing my husband meant losing my roof. But I realized my roof wasn't a man. My roof was my own two hands, my dignity, and the peace of sleeping at night without fear. I was a woman who endured, who sold her safety nets to build a man up. But in the end, I learned that sacrifice is only beautiful when it is given to someone who appreciates it. Otherwise, it is just self-destruction. You can love someone with everything you have, but always, always keep a road open to find your way back to yourself.